You wake up every morning with an idea sitting quietly in your mind, an idea you never touch or bring to life. You feel it sitting inside your chest like a quiet weight, heavy and persistent, reminding you of what could be. You tell yourself, today will be different, that this time you'll actually start. But the day ends exactly the same way. You scroll through your phone, you plan in your head, you wait for the perfect moment that never actually comes. And slowly, without even noticing it happening, the years begin to slip away like sand through your fingers. This is the story of a man who had everything he needed to succeed except one critical thing: the courage to begin, to take that first step into the unknown despite his fear. His name was Daniel, and he was an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He was 32 years old, living alone in a small apartment on the east side of the city. He worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing agency, doing work that paid his bills but never inspired him. Every evening after work, he came home exhausted and opened his laptop with the same hopeful intention. He had a folder on his desktop labeled My Projects, filled with dreams he hadn't yet made real. Inside were dozens of half-started ideas, rough sketches, unfinished designs, and scattered notes he never returned to or completed. Daniel dreamed of starting his own creative studio someday, building something that was truly and completely his own. But every single time he sat down to work on his projects, a voice inside him whispered the same thing. It's not good enough yet. You need to learn more. You need to be better than this. You're not ready to show this to anyone. They won't understand what you're trying to do. What if people laugh at your work? What if they think you're foolish for even trying? So he would close the file quietly, feeling defeated, and tell himself he'd try again tomorrow with fresh energy. Weeks became months. Months turned into years, and nothing ever moved forward or changed in any meaningful way. His girlfriend, Emma, noticed the pattern repeating itself over and over, the cycle of hope and retreat. She saw the sadness in his eyes when he talked about his dreams, the quiet disappointment he carried. She asked him gently one night over dinner, "Why don't you just start something small and see what happens?" Daniel looked away from her gaze and said quietly, "I will, I promise, soon." But his voice lacked conviction. But deep down in his heart, he didn't believe himself anymore, and he knew she could sense it. At work, his boss began giving the best creative projects to younger designers who were less experienced but more confident. Daniel watched them present bold ideas in meetings while he stayed silent in the back, invisible and unheard. He felt invisible, like a shadow moving through his own life, observing but never truly participating in it. One evening, after a long day, Emma sat him down at the kitchen table and said something that broke him. "I love you deeply, Daniel, but I can't watch you give up on yourself anymore. It's too painful." She wasn't leaving him or threatening to end things, but her words hit harder than anything else ever had. That night, Daniel sat alone in the dark living room and cried, really cried for the first time in years. He realized with sudden clarity that he was afraid not of failure, but of being truly seen by others, of putting something real and vulnerable into the world and having it rejected, criticized, or simply ignored by everyone. The next morning, feeling raw and exposed, Daniel went to a small coffee shop near his apartment to think. He sat in the corner by the window, staring blankly at his laptop screen, paralyzed once again by fear. An older man sitting at the next table noticed him, observed his stillness, the tension in his shoulders. His name was Victor, a retired art director in his late 60s with silver hair and calm, knowing eyes. Victor had seen that look before many times in his life, the look of someone drowning in their own potential. He leaned over slowly and said quietly, almost in a whisper, "You're waiting for permission, aren't you? Waiting to feel ready?" Daniel looked up in surprise, caught off guard by the stranger's insight, his accurate read of the situation. Victor smiled warmly and said with quiet certainty, "I used to do the exact same thing for many years." They talked for over an hour, sharing coffee and stories, two strangers connected by a common struggle. Victor told him about the years he wasted waiting to feel ready, waiting to be perfect before he started. He said with gentle firmness, "The only way to start is to make the decision that starting badly is better than not starting at all." He gave Daniel a simple system, something he had developed over years and called the 5-minute rule. Commit to working on your idea for just 5 minutes a day. No judgment, no pressure, no expectations of greatness. If you want to stop after 5 minutes, that's fine. Stop, but you have to show up and start every day. Daniel agreed to try the system, skeptical but desperate enough to give it a genuine chance. The first day, he opened an old project he'd abandoned months ago and worked for exactly 5 minutes. It felt awkward and small, almost pointless, but he did it anyway. He kept his promise to himself. The second day, those 5 minutes turned into 15 without him even noticing the time passing. By the end of the week, he had finished a complete design he'd abandoned 6 months earlier out of fear. He posted it online with shaking hands, expecting silence, harsh criticism, or worse, complete indifference from everyone. Instead, 3 different people messaged him within hours saying they loved it, asking questions, showing genuine interest. One of them asked if he did freelance work, if he was available for a potential paid project. Daniel's heart raced with an unfamiliar feeling, not from fear this time, but from something closer to hope. He kept going with the system, 5 minutes every single morning before work, no matter how he felt. Some days it was hard and frustrating. Some days he wanted to quit entirely, but he didn't give up. Victor checked in on him once a week at the same coffee shop, always at the same corner table. He never praised him too much or made grand speeches, just nodded approvingly and said, "Keep going. You're doing well." 2 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon, Daniel received an email that changed the direction of everything. A small startup company wanted to hire him to design their complete brand identity from the ground up. It wasn't a huge corporate contract, but it was real work, his work, something he had earned through consistency. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday morning, just 4 days away, giving him time to prepare. Daniel prepared intensely for days, refining his portfolio, rehearsing what he would say, imagining every possible scenario. But the night before the meeting, doubt crept back in like an unwelcome visitor he thought he'd left behind. He thought seriously about canceling, about saying he wasn't ready, about running away from the opportunity he'd worked for. He texted Victor late at night, "I don't think I can do this. Maybe I'm not ready after all." Victor replied immediately, his message simple and direct. "You already did the hard part. You started. Now just show up and be yourself." The next morning, Daniel woke up early before his alarm, his mind already racing with nervous energy. He put on his best shirt, grabbed his carefully prepared portfolio, and walked to the meeting with deliberate steps. His hands were shaking slightly as he entered the building, but his steps were steady and his resolve was firm. The clients were kind, genuinely curious, and authentically interested in his vision and creative approach to their project. Daniel spoke from his heart rather than from a rehearsed script, sharing his honest thoughts and authentic creative process. He showed them his work, explained his design process in detail, and for the first time in years, he felt truly present. At the end of the meeting, they stood up, shook his hand firmly, and said, "We'd love to work with you on this project." Daniel walked out into the morning light, stepped onto the sidewalk, and exhaled deeply, releasing years of held tension. He didn't jump with joy or shout with excitement. He just stood there quietly, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, genuine peace, the kind that comes from finally becoming the person you were always meant to be. That evening, he met Emma for dinner at their favorite restaurant and told her everything that had happened. She held his hand across the table and said softly, "I'm so proud of you," her eyes bright with emotion. Not because he got the job or the money, but because he finally believed in himself enough to try. 3 months later, Daniel left his agency job permanently and started working independently as a freelance creative director. It wasn't easy every day. There were struggles and setbacks, but it was his life, his choice, his path. He still saw Victor at the coffee shop regularly, and every time the old man just smiled knowingly and raised his cup. Daniel learned something during those transformative months that no one had ever taught him in school or in life. Talent without action is just a beautiful prison, a cage made of potential that never becomes reality. Fear doesn't go away when you finally feel ready. It goes away when you move forward anyway, despite its presence. And the life you want doesn't start when you feel completely prepared, when everything is perfect and aligned. It starts the exact moment you stop waiting for permission and take the first brave step into the unknown. If you've been waiting to start something important, let this story be your sign, your moment of decision. Comment below what you've been putting off, hit subscribe if this story touched something real inside you, and remember always, 5 minutes today is infinitely better than someday never.